It was 20 years ago today, Saturday, 1 February 2003, that the Space Shuttle Columbia broke up and disintegrated in the skies over the southwestern United States during its attempted re entry, resulting in the total loss of the vehicle and the deaths of all 7 crew members. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you already know I absolutely hate the Space Shuttle. It was the second most disastrous blunder of President Nixon's tenure in office, but Nixon didn't care. He hated space exploration. He viewed NASA as a pointless, wasteful Democrat Party pork barrel project. The result of this all was that the shuttle never really had any coherent mission profile, since it was originally part of a much bigger and more expansive follow on to the Apollo program, but then all the other parts of the space transportation system, as it was called, they all got budget cut right out of existence, but they kept the shuttle orbiter, even though they were no longer going to be doing any of the things that they had designed and built the orbiter to be used for in the first place. So then the next 35 years of U.S. space exploration turns into, well, we've got this space pickup truck, we might as well drive it around and try and figure out something to do with it. And then every once in a while, somebody in the public would say, but don't we want to build a moon base? Don't we want to put boots on Mars? Isn't that what we were supposed to do after Apollo? And a whole succession of presidents and NASA administrators said, yeah, I guess that's something we want to do at some indeterminate future date, but what are y'all in such a damn hurry for? Let's just drive our space pickup truck around in circles for another 10 or 20 years. So, where our space exploration goal used to be a lofty and clearly defined one, which consisted of get boots on the moon, do it before 1970, and do it before the Russians, from 1975 on, as far as manned spaceflight goes, NASA largely became an agency in search of a mission. Literally, the only thing the space shuttle ever did that couldn't be done with an unmanned rocket launch was the deploying and servicing of the Hubble Space Telescope. That is it. Now, there are some shuttle apologists who will try to tell you otherwise, but they are either lying or delusional, possibly both. Moreover, the shuttle orbiter was supposed to be safer for the astronauts by multiple orders of magnitude than any previous space vehicle. NASA's managers, they sat before Congress and confidently asserted that the odds of a catastrophic failure of the orbiter were on the order of 100,000 to 1. What did that number wind up being in real life? 67.5 to 1. So they only got that prediction wrong by a factor of 1,850, which of course is why you should always trust whatever the professional scientists say. 135 flights, 2 losses of vehicle and crew, 14 dead astronauts sacrificed on the altar of hubris, incompetence, bureaucratic bean counting, and corporate cowardice. For although we had 2 catastrophic failures, neither one of them owed any structural or design defect with the orbiters themselves. Challenger was destroyed because NASA decided to launch the vehicle when the weather conditions were outside of the safety margins, and they forced Morton Thiokol, the contractor who made the O-rings for the solid rocket boosters, to sign off on the launch under the implicit threat that they would lose their contract and be thrown off the program if they didn't play ball. Which is to say, the NASA managers knew they were choosing a course of action that could very well result in mission failure and loss of the crew, and they didn't give a damn. They just wanted Thiokol's signature on the memo so that in the event of a catastrophic malfunction, they could duly point the finger and assign the blame to somebody else. With Columbia, on the other hand, there was a design flaw, but again, it wasn't with the orbiter. That was just a bit of EPS foam that broke loose from the external tank. There was no particular reason for that piece of foam to exist. It was sort of a weird ramp-shaped protuberance that covered the joint where the attachment strut connects to the tank, so it was mostly there for aesthetic purposes. It served no aerodynamic or insulational function. But who cares anyway? These bits of foam fall off during launch all the time. They strike the orbiter all the time, and it's never caused us any trouble. Now, for Christ's sake, it's just a bit of polystyrene after all. But, as so often happens with conventional wisdom, the conventional wisdom wound up being all wrong. For while it was true that there had been numerous other foam strikes that didn't cause any problem, None of those foam strikes hit the leading edge of the orbiter wing, which is the thinnest and weakest part of the airframe. So Columbia orbited for 17 days with a giant-ass gaping foot-wide hole in her left wing, and it was a 100% certainty that the whole time that the vehicle and the crew were going to be doomed if and when they attempted re-entry. Now, there were some mid-level NASA managers on the ground who were very, very worried about the foam strike. They could see on the super slow motion video that there was a plume of material associated with the foam piece striking the wing, and this was something that had never been observed with any of the previous foam strikes. So there was reason to believe the orbiter had suffered potentially severe, possibly catastrophic damage during launch. And these 2 or 3 managers burned up the phone lines and the email inboxes of their superiors, but to no avail. The senior managers and administrators, they all said, "Oh, come on, it's just a bit of foam. Don't get your knickers in a twist." And besides, if there's a big hole in the wing, there's no way to fix it anyhow, so shut up and stop bothering me before I write your ass up. And no matter where your opinion lies on the bureaucratic aspects of the whole thing, this is inarguable. Those 7 crew members had a right to know their true situation. They had a right to know they were flying a damaged ship. They had a right to know they were in serious, very serious, potentially fatal danger. And even if the final result wound up being exactly the same, they had a right to attempt some sort of improvised repair with whatever materials they happened to have on hand. All of their choices were taken away, and NASA decided to lie and blow happy smoke up their asses for 17 days. So as we mark this anniversary, sure, yes, let's spare a moment to honor the memory of Rick Husband, Willie McCool, Mike Anderson, Casey Chawla, Dave Brown, Laurel Clark, and Ilan Ramon. But let's also take a moment to be righteously angry at the unconscionable behavior of NASA leadership. And let's never lose that anger, because the lives of some future crew may very well depend on it. Let's have a silent open tonight, if you please. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I have informed Jim Eagle he can't have his paycheck until he sends me a sexy FaceTime video. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant. And if you're old enough to remember, say, 8 or 10 years ago, then you probably remember a world where there was no such thing as a diversity and inclusion department. Human society and commerce somehow, improbably, against all the odds, managed to function just fine for many tens of thousands of years without any diversity and inclusion managers ever existing. And this is a shockingly heretical thing to say here in the year 2023, for nowadays every college, every university, every government agency, every big corporation, even many mid-sized and smaller businesses now have their own diversity and inclusion departments. You could argue, and pretty convincingly I think, that no new industry has ever insinuated itself into every sector of the society faster and become more ubiquitous in less time than the diversity and inclusion industry has. And despite all this, I've got this one nagging question in the back of my mind that I can never seem to get any closer to answering, and that is, just what in the hell does a diversity and inclusion manager actually do all day? So I decided to turn to the professionals, the people to whom you go to answer esoteric questions about ridiculous made-up industries, and so I went to Monster.com, and now I am going to read out the entire Monster.com synopsis for that coveted position of diversity and inclusion manager. And as I am reading this, bear in mind that this is supposed to be a description of a job and its attendant duties and responsibilities. But if we get to the end and you're still thinking, wow, that's a hell of a lot of words to say absolutely nothing, don't worry, you're not alone. In fact, if anything, you're probably one step closer to figuring out what a ridiculously absurd racket this whole thing is. Quote, introduction. Many companies are taking steps to build a more inclusive workplace, and one of those steps includes hiring people who can help create a culture where every employee is treated equally and feels welcome. Learn how to become a diversity and inclusion manager and usher in positive change. What is diversity and inclusion? Quote, Diversity ensures people from a variety of backgrounds are represented. Inclusion means those people are valued for their contributions and perspectives. Diversity and inclusion in the workplace entails creating fair opportunities for all employees, regardless of age, ethnicity, race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, education, physical disability, socioeconomic status, and a partridge in a pear tree. D&I managers focus on nurturing a work environment where employees feel safe being their authentic and true selves without fear of discrimination. These managers help companies to set a level playing field for all employees to reach their full potential. The importance of a diverse workforce. Quote, the best companies for diversity are familiar with the upshots. Those that have greater racial and gender diversity tend to outperform companies that are predominantly white and male, according to a study by McKinsey & Company. God, I would love to see that study. Studies also showed that the benefits of a diverse workplace include fostering higher levels of employee engagement, attracting and retaining candidates, and boosting the public's perception of a brand or company. What does a diversity and inclusion manager do? Quote, diversity managers often perform a wide range of job duties and may work under the umbrella of human resources. Their responsibilities can include the following: reviewing a company's current practices and policies, assessing the extent to which they support or hinder the organization's diversity and inclusion goals, planning, developing, and facilitating the implementation of diversity programs and strategies, working closely with company executives to build a culture of inclusion, advising on the development and delivery of diversity recruitment, retention, and promotion practices, collaborating with communications team and recruiters to drive external and internal diversity-related messages. Whatever any of that means. Diversity and inclusion training. Quote, to learn how to become a diversity and inclusion manager, you must complete a handful of educational and professional prerequisites. A bachelor's degree in human resources or business administration are common first steps. Some of the areas covered may include equal employment opportunity law, talent management, and emerging trends in the workforce. After gaining some work experience, you'll want to seek out continuing education through diversity and inclusion certification, Jesus Christ, either via traditional colleges and universities such as Cornell, 18 months, and the Yale School of Management, 3 weeks. Bit of a disparity there. Or specialized D&I organizations such as the Institute for Diversity Certification. I can't believe that is a real thing that exists. To move up the ranks in D&I and reach managerial and director levels, a master's degree may be required by certain employers. How much does a diversity and inclusion manager make? Quote, a diversity and inclusion manager's salary is likely to be similar to that of training and development managers who make $113,350 per year according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The pay ranges from $64,720 to $196,070 and is dependent on your experience and credentials as well as where in the country you are employed. You can look up the average salary for diversity managers in your location by using the Monster Salary Guide. Jobs in diversity and inclusion. Quote, ready to make a difference in today's workplace? Now that you know what the job entails, do we? What professional certifications to get and how much you'd make, it's time to start applying to jobs. Check out all the positions open for diversity and inclusion manager jobs on Monster today. As for where the jobs are, as per the BLS, these are the top 5 states with the most jobs for diversity managers. California, New York, Illinois, Texas, Massachusetts. Top 5 areas: New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, Washington, D.C. I know you're shocked by all of those selections. Bring your passion for D&I to the workplace. After understanding how to become a diversity and inclusion manager, it's vital to stay informed on the companies who are eager to welcome your talents. Want some help? Monster's got you. Upload your resume for free today so that recruiters can seek you out for top D&I jobs. End quote. That's all there is. And I don't feel like we're any closer to cracking the mystery of what these people actually do all freaking day long. And that's no accident. Because this is a fake industry. Ergo, it is full of fake jobs. Why do we have such a massive supply of fake jobs in a made-up industry? Because we have got an entire generation of young adults running around with worthless college degrees that they got by majoring in made-up subjects that did not exist at the start of this century, and with good reason. Your average recent college graduate these days has no useful skills of which to speak, and no knowledge has been imparted to him or her in the course of his or her schooling except how to vomit out idiotic leftist catchphrases. In fact, to a large extent, the American college campus has become such a bizarre alternate universe unto itself that people who graduate college often have little choice but to spend the whole remainder of their lives inside of that same university ecosystem because that is the only place where they know how to function. And what's the remedy? Well, we better build a new department here, pronto, so we have fake jobs for all these idiots that we failed to educate. And hey, as long as we're asking forbidden questions, let's ask the most taboo question of all. Why is diversity, for its own sake, a good thing? It's not a question we really ever hear asked, and that's a remarkable thing because our entire society is being remade. It's been in the process of being remade for over 20 years in service of this idea that diversity and inclusion is a noble and desirable end unto itself. But how can you make that argument without defaulting at some point to open racism? Pro tip, you can't. It's impossible, and that probably has much to do with why we only ever hear vagaries and platitudes and never any actual specifics from the diversity and inclusion crowd. Because if diversity is a desirable end unto itself, that argument leads you to a really dark place pretty quickly if you start subjecting it to basic intellectual scrutiny. For example, let's say you've got a company with a workforce of 100, and they're all white males, all good workers, and the company functions just fine. According to the tenets of diversity and inclusion, you have already got a racist conspiracy on your hands. Because if there is a group of people doing a thing, and they're all white dudes, well, obviously there's some sort of evil bigotry going on, right? And moreover, if the orthodoxies of the diversity and inclusion religion are in fact true, it means our hypothetical company is already running at a self-imposed disadvantage because an all-white male company is automatically and materially inferior to a company full of one-legged, non-binary, midget albino Eskimos of color. Diversity is our strength, they tell us. If you fire white dudes and replace them with black women, your company automatically becomes better at whatever it is your company does. How? Well, they never tell us that part. They simply inform us that we are required to believe and affirm all this stuff, or else we will be declared racist and sexist and homophobic and all of the other istophobias. And with that in mind, I was very delighted and pleased to read this morning's news that Representative Chip Roy of Texas is bringing a bill to the House floor that would eliminate all diversity and inclusion departments in all federal agencies. And to that I say, what in the hell took so damn long? Wouldn't it have been a great idea to do that back when the Republicans were in control of all the organs of government in 2017 and 18? Wouldn't it have been a worthwhile thing for President Donald Trump to at least talk about? I think it would have, but he never did. And that's too bad. Because diversity and inclusion departments in government, they are institutionalized racism, and we all should be ashamed that they exist. If the whole thesis of your industry centers on the idea that replacing white males with people who aren't white males is a good and worthwhile and desirable thing, and you're unwilling to explain how or why that is, then you only have one choice remaining. You can either embrace your racism, or you can keep pretending you're not a racist. Take your pick, I guess. I would challenge you to explain why diversity is objectively a good thing, and to do it without any resort to racism, but we both know you can't do that. It's why you traffic only in vagaries and platitudes, because if you spoke frankly and openly about the true nature of this whole diversity project, it would sound pretty damned morally repugnant, because that is exactly what it is. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button and pulverize the notification bell until it begs for its life. I'll see you Friday. Have a pleasant tomorrow. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.